Awesome. So I'm going to jump into things. Welcome to our wonderful panelists and also to our lovely attendees who have joined today for our first installment of Industry Series, Unpacking Careers and the Industry. My name is Keith Byam. I'm going to be the host and moderator, really facilitating this conversation. And I'm excited to be joined by some amazing leaders in the healthcare and pharma industry. They're going to be sharing more about their stories, ways in which they themselves broke into the industry, the folks that were part of their journey, and really lending more into what are those skills, those competencies, the experiences that really make a difference when thinking about how to break in, but also how to be successful within healthcare. And so I'm excited to speak with this panel list of amazing speakers. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves as they're going to do the best justice. And so what the focus of today's session and how it's going to look, we're going to have some introductions from our panelists to share a little bit more about themselves. And then from there, segue into a moderated Q&A. So have some great questions that I'm excited to engage with the speakers. And then from there, wanting to create space for you, the attendees. And so after the moderated panel, we'll open the floor for attendees to be able to share questions that they have. So as the speakers, as the panelists are speaking, please take note of questions that you have, and you can throw that in the chat when we have Q&A. Additionally, I know there's going to be things that they share that really connect with you, that you want to affirm or that you want to give praise to. So feel free to drop comments in the chat if there's things that speak to you or resonate that you're hearing. And also feel free to use the emojis and reactions as well. So I'm going to now kick it off to Kishane, who, in addition to who's going to share his role, is also an MVP board member. And so I have the amazing pleasure of getting to work closely with Kishane and really partnering with him as we really steward and bring more awareness to MVP. So Kishane, can you kick it off? And then from there, just popcorn it to the other panelists to introduce themselves. And please share your name, your pronoun, your title, your company, and what's something that you're most excited about as part of your job.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Kishane Davis here, pronouns he, him. I'm currently the Senior Director of our U.S. Field Force here at Vertex Pharmaceuticals. Very happy to be here with all of you this afternoon. Something proud about what I get to do every day is not only building dynamic teams, but watching individuals start at point A and flourish and grow their careers dynamically. One of the biggest joys for me is hiring individuals that even rise above the ranks of myself. So it's great to tap someone and see someone with potential and watch them grow. So you mentioned popcorn it. I will popcorn it over to Erin.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Kishane. It's wonderful to be in the presence of two amazing people such as yourself and Pritesh. And Keith, thank you for having me here. And I just kind of want to say to Christine Sackdeland, who's on as well, before I introduce myself, and I'll make it quick, I just wanted to say that I'm very humbled and happy to be here today, because if it wasn't for Keith and Christine Sackdeland, who is our VP at Otska America Pharmaceutical for CNS, the strategy and solutions, I would not be here. So actually my pronouns are she, her, hers. I put it up there because I was like, let me go ahead and add that. I am a Flint, Michigan native. I'm so excited to finally be in industry. I went to pharmacy school, and one of the things I'm really excited about at Otska is, and for anyone that doesn't know, it's a very wonderful global company that heavily focuses on CNS, so neuroscience. So I'm actually in the role of health science advisor. We help with mental health along with other therapeutic areas. But what I'm really excited about since I started in November is to be able to combine my creativity with helping patients and helping providers bridge the gap of therapeutic area within mental health and helping them to really feel better. And I really appreciate that, to be able to help and come up with innovation, because that's really what Otska is about, is innovative ways. and I'll hit it over to Pritesh. So thank you for bearing with me.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Erin. I'm very honored to be here today. Really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you all for joining this important discussion today. My name is Pritesh Shah. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Novocure. Novocure is a global oncology company. We make a medical device that today helps patients with glioblastoma and mesothelioma. And we have a deep pipeline where we're exploring tumor treating fields, our platform technology in various solid tumors. So our goal is to help patients that have various forms of cancer by adding on to whatever treatment they're on and helping them get to their survival goals and their life goals by extending their lives. I've been with the organization for 10 years. I've been in the industry for close to 24 years now. I started as a PharmD fellow, so I did my postdoc fellowship in industry. So immediately while I was in school, my desire was to end up on the sponsor side, because I felt like, at least through my exploration of that space, that on the sponsor side, I could help thousands and thousands of patients versus sometimes in the clinical practice helping one or two patients. And at the time when I was exiting pharmacy school, there was a heavy focus on community-based pharmacies and hospital settings. Lots of experience there while I was a student, but I fell in love with all aspects of the industry. And I joined as on the medical side, and I transitioned about 3 or 4 years into my career on the commercial side. And I've spent the remainder of my tenure in industry on the commercial side. The most exciting part of my job, I would say, is to work with people with diverse skills, diverse backgrounds, and really bringing teams together to solve problems and to take advantage of opportunities and really helping patients. That's really what drives me. All the organizations that I've had the privilege to be a part of are purpose-driven organizations and really have helped thousands and thousands of patients either overcome what they're facing or at least get an extension of their life. And that's what drives me today, so many years into the industry. And I see so many possibilities of continuing to do that as we move forward.
Thank you all for introducing yourself and sharing more about the excitement and the different aspects of your work, as well as just introducing, how you're showing up today in this space. Pritesh, you said something around, really finding that purpose and being able to drive impact. And I think that's a great place for us to kind of serve as the anchor for our first question. You all spoke about the work that you do and different roles within the industry. And so you have a role within the healthcare industry, and you all shared a little bit about it, but tell us more. Did your younger self see yourself in the role that you're in currently? And if not, how did we get here? So I would love to hear from the speakers, and Dr. Coney, if you can start, would love for you to take the first question.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. And the question that you pose, I love this question because I definitely did not see myself even going into healthcare. I will be very transparent. I'm very right-brained, and I really pride myself in kind of taking what I've done with my degree, with my PharmD, and kind of, making my own pathway. So as a younger person, actually really was heavily in journalism, media, arts. I took classes, while I was going through my pre-pharmacy curriculum to kind of nurture that side of marketing and journalism. So I'm very apt to want to create things. I think that's important, is creating. So to answer your question, now that I'm here, and I went through pharmacy school and I was able to really understand, that clinical side, I decided, well, from taking everything I've learned about patient care and taking everything that I've learned about what I love through my passions, industry was such a great way to go into. So I didn't notice this until later when I was a P1. One of my friends who was in pharmacy school, she was 3 years ahead of me, told me about industry. And I said, going through school, I'm sure Pritesh, you kind of figured, okay, community pharmacy or hospital, that was the only two ways that heavily we were, given. but industry was something that I knew I could bridge the gap between my right brain and left brain self and continue to grow. And that's important for me. So I think no matter what I do in life, I've always wanted to grow and innovate in a space where I could feel heard and feel valued around other people. So in a nutshell, that's me.
And whoever would like to take it next, Pritesh, Kishane.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Did my younger self see myself in this role? I'd say a little bit of yes and no. So I was reflecting back on this. Growing up as a child, I suffered with severe allergies. And I can remember, all the testing that was taking place as a youth and eventually having to go for these weekly shots and being on medicine. And I can remember thinking to myself, it inspired me to want to, at the time, find a cure for allergies, especially environmental allergies at the time, and really start to help patients like myself achieve a better quality of life. That was the beginning of my mindset looking towards healthcare. I thought I was going to become a doctor at the time. And throughout various networks and engagements, I started to learn about the other areas of healthcare. So whether it was nursing or being a physical therapist and other ways to help patients. Ultimately, I went to Howard University and became an occupational therapist. I worked at Johns Hopkins Hospital for a few years, treating patients with strokes and traumatic brain injuries, children with learning disabilities as I moved into the DC school systems as well. So the healthcare part of it was also there. I also loved business. I was very intrigued by the mindset of business. I won't go into a great deal of detail now, but through a variety of key individuals in my life, they opened up the door of pharmaceuticals and biotech. And that really allowed me to bridge this world of healthcare and business and this focus on quality of life of the patient all into one nugget. So in a sense, I saw myself, but it evolved. And I'm really thankful to be a part of the industry and the numbers of patients that we've been able to treat with transformative medicines.
Great, and I'll wrap it up here with that question. And for me, I always saw myself somehow on the industry side. So it was a matter of how and kind of what I was going to be doing. So my pursuit when I was in academic training was focused on how do I get to explore opportunities to be on the sponsor side or the organization. And it was challenging to find opportunities. When I went to school many years ago, the industry path was not as well defined. You had to seek out opportunities, and it took some legwork, sort of kind of elbow grease, so to speak, to find opportunities to get exposure. And then once I was in the role, I didn't think that I would be in the role that I'm in today. I never really thought about sort of what the ultimate destination would be. I still don't think that way. I think all roads are open. And I think the approach that I've taken and something that I enjoy is constantly learning. If you're learning something new, kind of lead with your curiosity. And if you're solving problems, if you're helping people along the way, then it's a meaningful opportunity and it should be pursued. So I didn't necessarily see myself in a chief commercial officer role, certainly saw myself in the industry in some capacity. And we'll talk a little bit more about my transition from medical to commercial because there were lots of opportunities and learnings on that front when I reflect on it.
Pritesh, I'm happy that you had that pause and you and Kishane, there was like 2 points that you brought up each that I took note of. And so what I'm hearing is this theme around finding ways to combine your interests and the things that you want to pursue more of. And Dr. Coney, you also brought that up as well, of that right brain really, like how can you be creative with the work that you're doing and finding ways to combine it. And I'm also hearing, Pritesh, you brought up essentially the journey. And while it was that you knew where you wanted to go, there was still the openness and the flexibility of what opportunities were going to come along the way. And so I like to segue into our next question, which is, I'm going to make the assumption that there were a lot of great people that were part of your village and your journeys and your process. And so who and what were who were the people that were instrumental in your success, or what was it that was really instrumental? And so it might have been a specific moment or insights or advice, but would love to hear like some stories of what were some valuable takeaways along this the journey, the journeys that you all have had so far.
Yeah, I can start with that and then we can build on it. So for me, as I mentioned, the transition from being on one side of a functional area and transitioning to another side where I didn't have any formal training, and that's on the business side. So I didn't bring with me the backing of a proper business training. I didn't have an MBA, didn't have the extensive background in being in front of customers that comes sometimes in being a sales specialist or a sales leader or being a medical science liaison in the field. My training or my background was primarily product specialty on a medical side, contributing to medical communications and medical strategy. And I had my sort of 3 to 5 year goal was to end up on a brand team, a marketing team, either in oncology, which was the disease area that I worked in, or anywhere else for that matter, because just getting to enter and learn and kind of open up a new door was the goal. And here, a manager at the time who I worked for on the medical front, his name was Patrick Riley. Patrick is still somebody that I think about his approach often because he allowed me to explore, the opportunity to explore. He gave me the opportunity to think about possibilities beyond the function that I was in without thinking about, hey, well, you have all this work to do and you're going to go explore something else, or I'm going to lose you as a talent on the team. There was a lot of dialogue and a lot of support to explore, to have conversations, to learn about other facets of the industry that were new to me, and then settling on an idea, really working with him to co-create that opportunity to say, hey, when this opportunity comes about, how should I think about it? And he helped me then transition to an opportunity that serendipitously came about and helped me then transition into that role. So mentors and managers and anybody for that matter that you consider to be a confidant can play a key role in helping you think about possibilities, sometimes rethinking possibilities, because you may have a path forward and getting more insights allows you to refine that path or to come up with another approach to solving a problem or taking a path forward. So it's really, really important to have people like that in your career, throughout your career.
So I love hearing what Pritesh just ended with, because it's kind of how I transitioned into the industry as well. I reflect back on a variety of social engagements. You know, post-college, maybe you're at an engagement here and you're at an engagement here, and you would meet people. And I'm always curious, and I always enjoyed engaging with individuals and asking them what their career paths were. And there's one individual in particular that I met many years ago, 20 plus years ago, and it happens to actually be Christine. And she was always open with sharing what she was doing within the industry, the impact she was making for patients. I saw the passion she had for the work she was doing. And what she did was really special. She's one of a few mentors that actually set up what was called an informational working day. And I had an opportunity to visit her organization at the time and meet key individuals within the organization to learn about what they were doing, how much they loved their job, and the impact that they were making. And what she was doing was not only being a mentor, but a networker. I still am close to some of those individuals I met 20 years ago. So she opened up a door that allowed me to think beyond, and I loved my role as an occupational therapist, but I believe she saw something in me that there was an opportunity for me to spread my wings even further from a business perspective while still tapping into my healthcare. And that was really the beginning of my journey into that organization at the time. And then I flourished into a variety of roles, sales leadership. I spent time in marketing. I too have that right brain. I love being creative. I'm a musician by trade as well. And it was an opportunity for me to still keep that side of me. So that theme will ring true. There isn't one path that you have to take. You can still tap into all your talents and leverage them in the road that you decide to go after.
Yeah, so thank you for both of you for sharing that, because I feel like we were all three of us meant to meet. So everything you said I resonate with, and I know I'm the newest to the industry, and so once again, like I said, I'm thankful to be here. I would be remiss if I didn't mention. Funny enough, my parents are both on right now watching Craig and Lynetta Coney, so my dad would enjoy me saying this, but he's the reason why I really got into pharmacy. He connect me with people that were in pharmacy that, are retail. One person had their own retail company. And then, going from there, my dad introduced me to other people. So at the time, like I said, I didn't think about going into it. And it honestly was a challenge with wanting to do a lot of creative things. But as I matriculated through school, I was able to be connected with a great network, just like Kishane, you said, and Pritesh, your manager. Like I'm going to start where I am right now in Otska. I have an amazing manager. Her name's Wendy Duran, who's a senior HSA in the CNS department. And she's the one I directly go to. She is a Black woman. There aren't many African American women that I have come across that are in roles like that, which now we are becoming more prevalent. But I've been told that this is becoming more of an expansive area for us to get into. And so I am in a sales role. And so she's had 20 plus years of experience. And so it really made me happy to kind of interview with her. I interviewed with her and my ecosystem lead named Bob Stewart, who is amazing as well. And they were both very great on taking me on. And that means a lot for me because I don't have a marketing degree. I don't have a sales degree. I only have a PharmD. And it's interesting because I went straight to the doctorate because I went to Hampton University. And at the time they had a program for pre-pharmacy going straight into that PharmD. So I have a very interesting background with that. However, I wanted to just say that when I got introduced to Otska in particular, I was still in school going through rotations. I met a woman who retired. Her name is Cheryl Deutsch. She worked for Otska. And she gave me the tools and the inspiration to apply. I was just a P1 in pharmacy school. And so it always came back to my mind to think, I should look into Otska when I graduate. I should look into it. And so it's funny how God, if you're spiritual, I'm very spiritual and I believe in manifestation, things came full circle to be given this opportunity to get into it. And now I like to say I could try to continue to bring up other people who are behind me and people that graduated with me who are wanting to get into this industry role because it is very interesting and I think it could be tough for people because they think, oh, it's such a hard area to get into. Who do you know? How do you talk to people? And I know that's going to be something we segue into in a second, but I could thank endless people, but I just wanted to thank those few people for right now. However, I think networking, going to a lot of places, like I went to the National Sales Network, which if anyone is listening and you're young, that's a very great organization to go to. They have an Atlanta conference coming up, I believe, at the end of this year in November, maybe. Yeah, or August, between August and November. Check it out. But needless to say, as Kishane has said, he networked a lot. I networked a lot as well. And it just takes that one time for somebody to give you the opportunity. And in my case, I have to say that that one person that actually got me to the interview is someone who lives in Flint, Michigan. That's where I'm from. And she knew someone who worked for Otska. So after that, it's all about building that chain of networking. So needless to say, it's been a great ride and I'm happy to be here because it was hard to get to where I am now and be happy with what I'm doing. So
Thanks thank you all for all the like the comments and what you shared. And I'm like taking notes as you're talking as well. I have a follow-up question based on some of the comments that came up, and what I heard a lot of was leaning into newness, leaning into failure, because I'm hearing I didn't have the marketing degree or the marketing experience. I didn't have the MBA, but I'm picking up a theme of determination. I'm picking up a theme of willingness to learn and to lean into the discomfort or the failure. So maybe like for two folks, if you can speak to what does that look like, or how did it show up for you of leaning into discomfort? And I'll hone in a little bit more, especially for our viewers. I think there's this, what comes up is the imposter syndrome. I don't have the skill or I don't have the necessary traits to be successful in X career or X industry. However, you all have proven to be successful and still have areas of growth. And we're really excited with that challenge. And so what helped you lean into that discomfort or lean into that challenge, knowing that there was still more that you needed, but you were open to the willingness to succeed?
You just touched on the word, and hopefully everyone can hear me okay. The internet may be acting up. The ultimate way that I broke in, thank you, while I had a great mentor and mentors that opened the door, it didn't happen right away. It actually was a year later that I broke into the industry. Now, I don't know if anyone still does this, but back in the time, there were newspapers and job fairs. And I did not have the sales skills to break into sales. I was a healthcare individual, right? Healthcare worker, but I had the will. And you talked about willingness. And I would go to as many job fairs as I could. So for now, maybe it's more networking engagements, but I went and I was turned down. And ultimately, I met someone at that job fair who would become a hiring district manager a year later. And he asked me to stay in touch with him. And this is an important point. One, we have to have the will. Even if you don't have the skill, you have to keep pushing forward. But when you make a contact, it's up to us and as the individual who's trying to break through to keep that relationship going. And it was a year later when I touched base with this individual, and he said, "Oh my goodness, we're taking basically a chance, and we're hiring a portion of the field force that won't have sales experience. I'm so glad you reached out." And I came in for the interview and I landed the job. So again, will, persistence, and then maintaining those key relationships you make along the way are critical.
Yeah, along those lines, one of the things that I would add, and I'll share my anecdote here in 1 second, is patience. So you can have kind of a dream board, so to speak, of where you want to be. It's not going to happen overnight. There's a lot of things that need to come into focus, and sometimes it is luck or timing. A lot of times it's just knowing what you want to do, where you want to be, keeping an open mind, and also making sure others are aware of it. So just like the example that was shared, making sure that you are sort of sharing what you want to do, where you want to be with others, whether they're part of your network, your peer group, because somebody or another is going to hear about an opportunity and they're going to kind of tap you and say, "Hey, what about this? This is presenting itself now. Are you interested?" I'll share 2 anecdotes on this front. One related to don't be discouraged when somebody says, "Hey, you can't." In my early days on the medical side, I did a lot of connecting with individuals that were in roles that I wanted to be in someday. And one individual looked at my background, my experience, and said, "Hey, you will never be on the commercial side." And I asked, why would that be? And he said, "Well, you don't have the 3 things that need to check the box here. You don't have sales experience. You're too new into the industry. So you need at least 10 to 15 years of experience before you could be considered on the marketing side. And then the third one was you don't have an MBA. So you've kind of the 3 strikes. So go out there and work on all 3 of these things." And I took that, I could have taken that 2 different ways. I was definitely disheartened because it's not what I was hoping to hear. But I took that as a challenge to say, okay, well, how am I going to bridge the gap here? And I started to then spend a lot more of my time, even though I was part of a medical function, with people on the commercial side, going to sales meetings, going out into the field, meeting customers, whatever I could get my hands on. And sometimes it meant investing extra hours. And I was willing to do it because the trade-off was I was going to gain something in return that would accelerate then opportunities for me. So that's one example of somebody who had a very clear vision for me. And that was not good enough to me at the time. It still wouldn't be good enough, right? I think nobody should ever kind of close a door. They should help open doors. And I felt like this person gave me kind of the drive to kind of keep exploring, but really didn't open a door for me. So that's an interesting story that I often reflect on as I give back to people who are looking for opportunities, people who are looking to sort out sort of what their career should look like. The next one I'll kind of anecdote I'll use is when I was deciding at a critical juncture, again, what I should do. I grew up in the marketing ranks without having field experience. So with that being in sales. So my kind of decision point at this time was, hey, should I go out in the field and get this experience because it may limit my ability to grow in other roles? Or should I continue to grow on the marketing side? And the desire of the organization was to continue to allow me to grow on the marketing side. But one of the things that I did that I reflect on, and I'm so happy that I was able to do this, I spoke with about maybe 20 leaders in the organization, very senior commercial individuals. It was a large organization. And I sort of, in the discussions, I queried their response to, hey, is it sales or is it continue growing in the ranks? And I didn't get a definitive answer. I got almost a 50-50 split. People who had been in a sales function said, hey, you have to go sell. You have to carry the bag. People who had not said, hey, don't worry, you're already this far. You can keep going. And I ended up going in the field. And there's a longer story behind that, but I did end up going into the field, and that experience was invaluable. And while it was not a long duration, it was about maybe a year and a half, it allowed me to grow into the role that I'm in now. I probably would not have been considered for this role had I not done that opportunity many years ago. So kind of be open, be curious, and if a door looks like it's closing, push through it and find another door.
I love the grit, Pritesh, and even with Kishane, I think having that chutzpah to still break barriers, even when someone says you can't do something or someone says, you do that. And I like meeting people like that, because this inspires me, because I know for me, when I think about failures and I think about my journey, one of the things that comes to my mind is my freshman year of high school. I use this word all the time, and I actually am trying to utilize it even more as like an actual business thing. But I think one of my favorite words is the word effulgent. And if anyone has ever heard it, it's EFFULGENT, and it's an adjective which means to shine forth brilliantly. I took a spelling test, and that was the one word I remembered going throughout my career and everything and growing up. So I'd like to say, if anyone is feeling like they're feeling imposter syndrome or failure, just remember you can shine with great effulgence no matter what you do. And effulgent means to shine forth brilliantly. So that's something that I use when I start to feel imposter syndrome, or if I start to feel like, oh, what am I doing? Because I felt like that a lot. Once again, went through pharmacy school. It wasn't my true passion, but I made it for what it was. I had a lot of grit, and I said, this is something I can make into something I want to do later with my clinical background, but with my creative background. And one of the things I'll say is, when I went through rotations, I utilized a lot of those rotations to show my talent. So if you're someone going through a rotation, mine were 5 weeks. I was very interested in the innovation within medical devices, 3D printing, of that space. So I did a presentation at my hospital rotation about innovative devices utilized for healthcare. So I looked into different companies that did that, and I gave my own presentation about it. And so that goes back to what Pritesh was saying. It's like, show your talents, do those things that will show the pathway that you want to go down. And Otska has an amazing line of products, and we do have Abilify My Site, which is amazing technology. And I think that that's very interesting and innovative. So all I'm saying is, even if you're going through something and you feel like, oh, I don't have all the tools, just make it work for you, because that will all come down to, what did you do? It doesn't matter if it was a paid job. It doesn't matter if it was, just something you did on the side. It matters to the people that are going to be looking at the things you can bring to the table. So I believe that helped me. I had 9 rotations, and I didn't work through school. I didn't want to do work retail or anything like that, because I wanted to focus on my studies, and I utilized some of those rotations as work experience. So make sure you put those things on your CV, because even though you may feel like, oh, I don't have all of the experience, it'll still show some of the things that they're looking for that you might not even thought of yourself. You're like, oh yeah, I did that. I can show you what I can do, and it can translate into other areas. So don't be afraid to do something different. And even if you're doing something different from what's the norm, that's going to help you in your trajectory and what you want to do.
I would play myself if I try to eloquently summarize that all together, but the best that I can come up with is really be in the moment and taking advantage of all the opportunities that are in front of you. And so I wrote down, you are where you need to be to get to where you want to be. And so it's really, there's going to be moments in which really leveraging folks in your network, leveraging your peers, or having conversations to get an audit about, like, do you really want to do X in your future? So, leveraging folks that are doing that work in what Pritesh did, or even having a Patrick, someone that can really give you samples of projects and different different insights into what's going on around the company, like Pritesh was sharing. I really appreciate you all for, normalizing the journey and, just speaking to how we have to go through the motions and really take advantage of what's in front of us at the time. And I think it's really poignant to the folks that are listening as well. I want to kind of switch gears, and we spoke about this in different times, but would like to get into it a bit deeper. And so as you all, think about talent and heard this in the beginning around the excitement of cultivating teams and really empowering folks, of creating impact within the industry, would love to hear more about what advice or insights could you provide to talent, folks looking to break into the industry? And, I heard it, sometimes it's the competencies or it's the traits, it might be the experiences, but would love to hear from you all for the next wave of the workforce, for the folks looking to break into the industry. What should they be looking for? What should they be preparing themselves to really break into the industry? And whoever wants to take it first.
I can jump in.
Yeah.
So I'll take the sense of going back to this topic where I was kind of touching on soft skills. Sometimes an individual may not have all of the experience and or the skills of the actual role that they may be interested in. But to me, one of the things that I look for when that happens is, I talked about will earlier, but some of those soft skills, like how well do they interact with others? Collaboration is key in so many of the things that we do. How well do they collaborate with others? Do they have a genuine curiosity? Are they curious? Are they excited? Do they have a purpose-driven purpose? I heard Pritesh talk about that earlier, and I'm a part of an organization that is very focused on being purpose-driven as it relates to transformative medicines for patients. Grit is a word that often comes up in my industry. It's that level of resilience that no matter what, you're going to continue to push through. You heard me give the example of the year later to break into the industry. I didn't give up. I kept pushing forward. So those are a few examples of some key traits or characteristics that I look for, because you can't teach some of those things, right? Those are things that if you have them, they're innate, and they'll stand true throughout the test of time as you go through your career. A lot of the other things you can teach.
I know that I'm not in a hiring capacity, but I do think that some of the things that have helped me break into the industry, well, I would say interviewing in particular, since that's what my experience has been so far, is if anyone's listening, I will say that interviewing, if you do get a chance to get there, well, before you get to the interview, let me back up. What's helped me is to do informational interviews. So if you have a company or something of that capacity, or a person that works in that company that you want to reach out to, just go on LinkedIn, do it. Go and ask them, hey, can I borrow a few minutes of your time when your time is good, to talk about what you do in your position, so that I can, get a little bit more of a feel for the company as well as what capacity you serve in. Those informational interviews, and simply put, is just asking questions, will help you down the line. So when you get an informational interview, sometimes that'll lead to an actual interview. So for me, when I actually interview with Otska, I want to drop a name, and I can't remember her first name, but on YouTube, she has a name called Self-Made Millennial. She is a hiring manager, or she used to be a hiring manager. She has all the tidbits. that's another tip I'm going to give you to segue into, is to ask people who are actually in HR in other companies, what can I do to stand out, to be marketable, or to be presentable for this type of role, especially if you don't have all the experience. So if you look up self-made millennial on YouTube, this is someone who has worked in HR that gives a lot of great insight into how to interview and how to really show what you can bring to the table. So for me, that's what helped me, along with networking and continuing to just cast my net wide. That's something that's going to continue to help you, because you just never know what will come back to you. But just try to get those tools for when you do get the interview. And I'll claim that for everybody, for industry, when you get the interview, just come up with some tactics that are proven to be true from people that work in the HR area, as well as people that, such as Pritesh and Kishane, they would be great people to reach out to. If I was still searching for this job, I'm sure I would be talking to them right now, because they have all the great experience. So that's a little bit of what I would say.
Great. The few things that I would add, I agree with everything that's been said. What I would add is make sure that when you're preparing for the interview, you know enough about what you're going to be doing. So you don't have to know enough about the job, but you do need to know about the company, the culture, the values. If you can speak to a few people that maybe are connected to you via LinkedIn, I think that's a great tool that we have now that I didn't have, certainly when I was looking for jobs or early on in my career. And I get so many connection requests from people that just want to spend 15 minutes looking to understand what our organization's about. If they see a role, they'll link in and say, hey, can I know a little bit more about, would you mind spending time? And you'd be surprised if you ask for a very specific time like that, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. And these conversations don't need to be very lengthy. It's just a great way to introduce yourself, put a face to the name, and now all of a sudden you're top of somebody's mind. The other thing is lead with curiosity, in that make sure that you do enough research to match up sort of what value you can bring to the organization, but in return also what the organization can help you accomplish. So if you have some thoughts on areas that you want to explore, other things that you may want to do, I think it's a good opportunity to understand what possibilities there might be for career development, how the organization thinks about career development. Some organizations are very prescriptive. There's a very kind of prescriptive path, which is great because there's clarity around that. Other growing organizations, like the one that I'm a part of now, in the early days, it was really wearing multiple hats and then trying to figure out sort of how the organization was going to morph and move forward. So there's a little bit of that flexibility piece that comes into play as well if you're going to join a smaller growing organization versus an organization that's more established.
Thank you all for the insights that you provided, and really, like, speaking to like how folks can prepare for interviews, really do some digging in terms of like, what do they want to bring to a company or achieve? What goals do they have to really better align themselves to where they're trying to go within industry, but also what company feels like the right fit. I know we're going to have some more conversations around talent, but I would love to open the floor up for our attendees for any questions that they might have for our panelists. So feel free to either throw it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute yourself. I'll have you come off mute and you can ask your question. So we have about 10 minutes roughly for Q&A from our attendees. So fire away. And as questions are coming in the chat, I want to kind of bring a follow-up question to the group really quickly. It came up multiple times around mentors and different folks that were part of your network or your village, I would say, as you were coming through industry and also doing this work. And so we'd love if maybe like one or two people could speak of like best practices when leveraging a mentor, when utilizing and actively utilizing that individual in your network.
I'll start with this one. So I think one of the things about mentor-mentee relationships, very powerful relationships, it's an investment of time on both fronts. It's an investment for you as well as the person who is going to serve in a mentor capacity. So the first thing I would say is be respectful of that investment and be proactive about it. So just saying you have a mentor doesn't mean that the mentor is now going to take over and everything's just going to be laid out for you. I think that's a misconception sometimes that a lot of people have, is that having a mentor is just the start kind of the process, identifying somebody, or actually people should think about multiple mentors. And in this capacity, it truly is a relationship. Like any relationship, it takes time to get to know the individual. It takes time to really understand what sort of drives the individual, career paths, aspirations, even getting to know somebody on a personal basis. Many mentor-mentee relationships end up kind of well beyond the scope of the initial need or requirement, so to speak. And then I think it's really important to have diversity in thought here as well. So you could have somebody that is in a role that you aspire to be in, but then having somebody who's maybe in a completely different vertical, maybe not even in the same industry. If you're looking to lean on somebody on how to become a more effective manager or a leader, there are lots of people in leadership capacity, so they can give you a very different perspective than what's happening maybe in your industry. So think of it as a relationship. Like any relationship requires a level of investment, level of respect, and it matures and develops over time. So those are some of the things that I would share about mentorships.
I would add as well, when Pritesh just said to have relationships with everyone and to be, to be aware of valuing time. I think that's very important. And I wanted to bring up something I learned at the National Sales Network conference I was telling you about. That's going to be this year. I went to that one in November. Last year it was in DC. There was someone who said that you have 5 key relationships. And I was just looking in my notes to remember what she was saying, because I took notes then, but she has a book called nextmovebestmove.com. And her 5 key relationships, she says, and I think this is something I've utilized to have 5 key relationships as mentors, but those 5 key relationships are colleagues, teachers, mentors, which could be, anyone, as we're saying, sponsors and peers. So I think having those 5 key relationships in addition to the mentors is important. And all those people can be mentors in all those different areas. You could have a colleague that's a mentor. You can have a colleague that's a teacher, maybe a former teacher, a mentor that could be maybe a family member, a sponsor, and a peer. So I think having more than one and at least 5 will help to you'll get a broader aspect of life and different people's perspectives. So 5 key relationships, definitely keep that in mind when you're forming those mentorships.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Coney and Pritesh. I wrote down the 5 key relationships, because yes, folks can wear multiple hats. Your peers, your colleagues can very much be your mentors and folks that you're learning great things from, especially in the example of Kishane when he shared earlier with Christine being someone really pivotal as he came into industry. There was a question that came in the chat, which is, what is something you wish you had known before entering your current career? So would love to get some insights into that question. Thank you for that question, Matthew.
One of the things that I wish I maybe would have embraced differently are failures. There were lots of failures early on, lots of stumbling blocks, and sometimes those stumbling blocks led me to opportunities. So don't be, I guess I thought about my career in the early days very vertically. And the path that I've taken is quite the opposite. It's when things came about, when things were available, when I felt like I was ready to take the next step, or the organization felt like I was ready to take the next step. So I think that just embracing failure as an opportunity to learn, I think that's one of the things that we talked about earlier. But my younger self was not so open to that, or maybe didn't think about it in that manner. And even today, there are many days or many kind of aspects of my current role where I feel like the failures lead to greater outcomes than the successes that come about in how we approach things.
I would say something I wish I had known before entering my current career. I I will say I did my due diligence first and foremost, and I'll say what I wish I would have done. I will say I did my due diligence of asking people, as a PharmD, you could go into MSL or you could go into sales or either of those areas. One side is more clinical, one side is more promotion. So I will say that I made sure that I asked questions about the sales area, which is more promotion. I like to promote. I like to talk about an exciting product. So I will say I'm glad I did that. One thing I wish I would have done maybe as going through school is to search out more fellowships. I know every curriculum is different, and if you're not in pharmacy school or it's the same thing with internships. I think for me, I didn't seek out a lot of internships. So I would say I would definitely make sure that you all do that, because I think that would help you see even further into industry or whatever area. Every industry is different, but I knew in my mind that I wanted to get into industry. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna graduate and I'm gonna go full speed on getting what I want. So that was my mindset. However, I think that it is important to still look at those fellowships because there's so many other areas of industry like regulatory affairs and more on the marketing side, more, there's drug and development. There's so much that even I don't know. And I think that that's something that would be helpful, because then you'll be able to say, okay, I know for sure I'm gonna go here or here. So I'm happy with where I am at, but I would say definitely utilize those internships, fellowships, residencies.
I'll jump in here. I've been having some technical difficulty today, but trying to remain resilient and pop back in when I can. What I'll say is this: authenticity is key. I thought I had to be a certain way to stay within the industry or rise within the industry. And shame on me, as I look back, there were so many different aspects to who Kishane is. And I almost tried to bottle up sides of it to conform to what I thought was how I should be, when in fact, there were so many things that I was actually not giving to my organization because they were not getting all of me. So I would say, don't close off. If you're creative, it doesn't mean you have to stop being creative, right? If you have dreams of going down a certain path, it doesn't mean you can't do that within your organization. So it's just very important to me that that's what everyone walks away with. Authenticity, remain who you are, bring your true self to work. The organization will be grateful for it in the end.
Kishane, I'll say it was worth you having the technical difficulties to come in at the end and then do that mic drop just now with that point. It really sinks true, because I think it is that authenticity. It is showing up as your full self to work, that you will really bring not only just your full self, your true self, but it adds to the culture of the organizations. It is a value added. So I'm happy that you lifted up that point. I want to address one other Q&A before we close out. And there was a point around, can you discuss your thoughts on career ladder versus a career lattice? So if folks, whoever wants to take that question, we'll love it.
I can start with this. I can share my experiences as well as my thoughts on this. So I do think one of the things that oftentimes when you have a desired goal or desired position or desired role that you want to be in, you often think about how do you get from point A to whatever point that is, point Z. And it happens kind of in a stepwise manner or a vertical manner. And it can happen that way. But the better way, in my opinion, I'll couch that with my opinion, is a little bit of thinking of skills and how you build the foundation to where you want to get to. So if you think about your ultimate destination as the pinnacle of your career, if the more kind of the breadth of your experiences, skills, and the diversity in your experiences will determine your success as you kind of climb the pinnacle, so to speak, or the mountain. I'm a trekker, so I'll use the mountain climbing analogy here. And it's really important because this is one of those things where early on, I thought it was, again, this point to that point, and I had to make kind of specific steps. And I was part of an organization where it was very well defined, very structured. 2 years here, 3 years here, 5 years there. And this, I would say this was the model maybe some years ago, at least on the commercial side, very prevalent to kind of think about career development in a laddering format. The lattice really allows you to bring multiple facets of the organization and really opens up many, many more doors. And I think more and more organizations now are almost implementing opportunities when people think about succession planning, when people think about talent development, making sure that you're getting more than kind of that one note experience, because it will, when you get to a leadership level, it'll open up your eyes, it'll open up your ability to think kind of beyond what you're facing. And all of those experiences will come to the table when you're making a decision or where you're setting a path forward. So I am a big favor of this lattice type of experience. I tend to think of it as a pyramid or a foundation. Maybe that's out of date as well. I like the lattice, so maybe I'll borrow that term moving forward. But the more you can do early on, the more you can explore, the richer your contributions will be in a more leadership or a broader leadership capacity as you grow in your career.
One last point to Pritesh's point is remaining open to opportunities. There may be opportunities that come up that you may have never saw yourself in, but a leader taps you. Don't be so quick to say no. It may not be your original path, but it may be opening up another door down another road. So I say remain open and remain curious. But well said, Pritesh.
Great points that y'all shared. Pritesh, as you were speaking, my head went to wine in the fact of that, like really, as you were talking about, like I equated it to the complexities of work. And so you want to be like a full body wine. You want to have layers to the work. You want it to be cross-departmental. You want for it to really not just fulfill one aspect of your interest, but really allowing for you to have samples of multiple pies at a company as that adds to your growth. So I thought wine, I guess it's Wednesday, but thank you for addressing that question and for the questions that came from the group. This is a great place for us to wrap up. And what I like to do to close it out is two things. Would love for us to capture this moment. So we'd like to do a screenshot of the group. So if folks can give me a quick smile, and on 3, I'll take a photo for us. So 1, 2, 3. Great. So have that. We have to capture the moment. And then what I like to go into to really close this out is any lasting words of advice that you all can lend. In thinking of our audience, again, not only do we have our live attendees, but this will also be recorded and shared with our MVP fellows and community partners. And so what advice could you give to folks who are looking to tap into the industry, break into the industry, and or just generally of how to really lean into the journey, the career journey, and taking advantage of all that's going to be thrown their way?
Keith, with the fact that we live in such a digital world right now, Pritesh brought up LinkedIn earlier. There are so many ways to reach out and touch someone. So the opportunities are endless as it relates to be able to connect. So I would say, if you have an interest in something or an interest in connecting with someone, don't overthink it. Put your plan in place, decide what you want to say, or how you want to show up, and then go for it. And you may not get a response the first time or the second time, but it may be the third time. So in this digital age, leverage it to connect with key individuals that seem to be doing things that you're interested in and build that network.
I would say, as someone who's just getting into, I shouldn't say just getting into the workforce, but someone who's new to industry, people that I know that are in my boat that are wanting to get into it, look into some roles or things you can fit into your career niche, but look at the organization you're at right now. Even though you're in a retail role, let's say, there are opportunities for you to show managerial potential, but also business potential. Because yes, I think with retail, that might be more of a ladder thing, because if you're trying to go to the business side, at least from what I've been told, you have to be in a certain role for a while, but that might not be the case. So I'm saying, if you are in a role, don't be afraid to say where you are at that moment. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to see. I want to talk to leaders in my company. I would love that opportunity. And you never know where that will take you, because you could be, even though you're in retail, you could go on the business side someday, you know, and it could happen sooner. So I would say take what you have with where you're at the moment, and that will continue to build upon your career and what you want to do. So that really piggybacks off of Kishane, what you said. I think that that's so important.
And I'll end with two thoughts. One, I would say keep leading with curiosity. Just explore, be open to all possibilities that may exist. And then the last thing I'll add is think about your career as a plan. We do a lot of planning in our life. Careers are no different than that, but make sure that that plan is iterative. So as you kind of have an experience, as you kind of cross off things that you know you don't want to do, those things are really important. You may add things on that list of things. Hey, I want to explore market access, for example. I don't know what that's about. Or something in regulatory. I don't know what that's about. So if you keep an iterative sort of plan, then it just helps facilitate the kind of planning aspect, and also ultimately where you want to end up. And that ultimate destination may come sooner versus later. Be open to that as well. I think there's no kind of time boundness to this. That's something that I wish I knew back when as well, is that there's no kind of time limit to this. It'll happen in its own course. As long as you continue to have fun and continue to learn, you'll be on your way.
And sorry, I just want to say that's the hardest thing, Pritesh. That's the hardest thing, is to be patient. And I am a testament to that. It was so hard, but like these gentlemen said, just continue on and the right time will come. So that just resonated with me. And I've gone through a lot during this COVID period, because a lot of things were shut down, jobs, but just keep your positivity going and you will get to where you're supposed to be at the right time.
Well said. Thank you all for just like your insights, the gems that you provided. Really great context for our viewers, and just shining more light, peeling back the onion into how folks can break into the industry. So this has been a great first installment of Unpacking Careers in the Industry. I can't thank you all enough, and until next time, have a good one.
Thank you. Take care.